Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Maureen Callahan, columnist with dailymail.com. Maureen, thanks so much for coming back on.
Thanks so much for having me, Brittany.
After a much anticipated promise, thousands of documents related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy were released by the Trump administration. What do you make of the document dump? Anything surprise you?
Well, so it was 80,000 pages, and that's not all of them, despite the promise that we were going to see all of them. I actually wasn't quite surprised. It felt like a very passive aggressive, our hand has been forced news dump, because none of these documents were organized in any comprehensive way whatsoever. So there was no prioritizing, there was no categorization, such as here are witness statements, here are images, here is the autopsy report, which, by the way, the Navy pathologist who oversaw the autopsy of JFK the night after the autopsy took all of those reports home and burned them in his fireplace. So seeing the sort of lack of meat on the bone, with this document dump is quite bracing and upsetting, frankly.
And I want to read one of the first lines of your column in dailymail.com. You wrote this: the JFK files apparently say nothing, and that says everything. What do you think that says, that we're not getting any bombshells, any of the things we were looking for just yet?
I think it says to us that they're never coming. I think it says to us that the top spies at America's alphabet agencies, who may or may not have been involved in this, wink, wink, would never have put in writing their plans. They would never have memorialized a successful execution of a sitting U.S. president on U.S. soil. There's no there. And this is, I feel, is my own feeling, it feels like the ultimate FU to an American public that has been very patiently waiting, loathed these many decades for some sort of answer, because nobody, not even Jackie, not even Bobby Kennedy, not John Connolly, the Texas governor who was sitting in front of JFK when he was shot, ever believed the Warren Commission's finding that it was a lone gunman.
I want to talk about just some of those theories that have really become popularized in recent years, because a Gallup poll from 2023 found that 65% of Americans think that there is some theory involving the Kennedy assassination. There is a conspiracy there. Did any of these documents answer any of these popular questions? Was the government involved? What motivation did Lee Harvey Oswald have? Also, the most popular theory, was there a second shooter?
Right. So, here's one thing. It's again, as I said, 80,000 pages without categorization, without being prioritized in any manner. So newsrooms are still trying to digest this massive, massive document dump. You would think that whoever is working in whatever department was in charge, the National Archives, I believe, in charge of getting this dump ready, which Trump said he was going to do, would have done so in a better manner. I don't think we're ever going to, we still don't know what Lee Harvey Oswald's motivation was. Jack Ruby's motivation for shooting Lee Harvey Oswald while he was in police custody on live television. Okay, this was the most high value suspect the federal government had in its custody, and he was just left wide open for yet another assassin to shoot him. Like, none of it adds up. And when you get to the point where in the 1990s, Seinfeld does an entire episode parodying the notion that there wasn't a second shooter on the grassy knoll, who can forget, right? Back into the left. You've gone through the looking glass.
You are an expert on all things Kennedy. You wrote a book, Ask Not the Kennedys and the Women They Destroyed. As someone who is an expert on everything in this family, what do you think is missing from the conversation when it comes to these documents, when it comes to these theories, when it comes to the public wanting to learn more about what happened?
I don't know. So Bobby Kennedy Jr., I am not a fan, but he has said he believes the CIA was responsible for his uncle's death and that they were involved in the subsequent cover-up. Jackie always kept her mouth shut about it. Robert F. Kennedy Sr., himself assassinated in 1968, always kept his mouth shut about it, even though he didn't believe it. As I said in my column from yesterday, John Connally, Jackie Kennedy, and Bobby Kennedy all had the exact same reaction, which was to use the plural. They. I want to Jackie said, let them see what they have done. I'm not changing out of my suit. John Connally, oh my God, they are going to kill us all. Bobby, I always knew they would get one of us. I thought it would be me. So that's like within minutes, an hour maybe. Nobody believed some rogue loser gunman from a 6th floor depository was able to get off those kill shots. Nobody.
From your research, then, why would they not be more fervent in speaking out, saying, I thought it was more than one people, or saying, whatever the Warren Commission found, I didn't really believe? Is it because it was such a traumatic event? Is it because assassinations were pretty popular in the 60s? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, it's, I've thought a lot about this. I think for someone like Jackie, there was only so far psychologically she could go. She had 2 children to raise. She was negotiating her own PTSD, which she suffered greatly from for her entire life. I think to acknowledge that it could have been a shadow conspiracy within the federal government would have been a little too much. Bobby, perhaps for similar psychological reasons, thought initially it had to be the mob because they were in the crosshairs of his DOJ. The Kennedy family had a lot of deep connections with the mafia. They helped buy JFK the presidency in the 1960s. And you have to wonder like how you could continue to live in a country that you believe slaughtered your relative.
I mean, it's a good point. And I want to go back to the slapdash nature in which all of these documents were released. There was no organization, and there weren't redactions when it came to hundreds of social security numbers, people's addresses, other sensitive personal data. What do you make of that?
I just think it's sloppy. I think it was a hostile act. I think that nobody who was involved in keeping these documents secret wanted them out. And again, if you start to comb through them, which anyone can do on their lunch hour, it's so anticlimactic. I mean, there's so much filler in there, stuff that seems tangential at best, if not outright extraneous. It really just begs the question, if those documents were held secret so long because they posed, as Trump said during his first term, after having to walk back his promise to release them, he said he was told that the release of those documents would pose such a grave threat to America's national security that it was just a non-starter. Well, what's the grave threat? Because it's not evident thus far in this dump. What could possibly, the logical question, the only grave threat to national security would be the knowledge that there was a shadowy cabal in the deep state that did this.
I mean, that is a good point, because when he said that, that really builds up these documents. And as of now, there are thousands. No one has been able to go through all of them yet. But as of now, it doesn't seem like there's any bombshell that was seemingly foreshadowed there. And President Trump said that all of the records are going to be released. Do you think that grave threat is going to be in those unreleased records? And why haven't all of them been released yet? What's the holdup?
I feel like it's almost such a great question. And I feel like it's almost a tautology, right? Well, all of the records haven't been released because all of the records are not going to be released. They said to us early this week, all of the records are going to be released. Tuesday, by the way, every newsroom in America was on the edge of its seat all day Tuesday. When are they coming? When are they coming? Well, they got dumped at 7 p.m. Okay. And then we were told it's not all of them. So who can tell the truth regarding even the release of these records, let alone what is contained therein?
And I'm obviously not comparing Jeffrey Epstein to JFK's assassination, but this seems like the same rollout of we're promised the release of all of the Epstein documents, but there's really nothing new there. We're promised the release of the JFK assassination documents. There's really nothing new there. I mean, why build this up and then there's really nothing there?
I think that whoever is truly in control of this information flow or the choking off of this information, the disappearing of this information, it just seems almost a kind of a great fig leaf. Well, it can't ever possibly come out. It would just be too ruinous to the country or to the interests of very powerful people. And then when they finally do come out, I mean, this is sort of the lowest level of comparison. But there was so much hullabaloo over Prince Harry's visa application and how that was going to be kept secret because it was too sensitive. I mean, I think we all know what's in it, okay? He's not that deep of a guy. It's his drug use, my opinion. And then finally they say, okay, we're going to release it. And they release it, and it's 6 pages of blacked out, redacted documents. Thank you. Thank you so much, federal government, for treating the American people like we are knuckle-dragging morons who can't handle the truth. Thank you.
And even if these documents were kept secret up until a few days ago, why were they kept secret if there's nothing there?
Right. That's exactly it. It goes right back to that earlier point. Well, either they're so explosive that they could lead to a national security crisis that threatens the very existence of this country going forward, or there's a bunch of filler and BS in them that nobody has the time or inclination to read. It cannot be both.
I mean, these were really built up. As I said, more Americans think that the Kennedy assassination involved a conspiracy than back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And that poll was just taken a few days ago or a few years ago. So what do you think's next? Do you think that any additional information, if there is just lost to history?
Oh, I definitely think it's lost to history. I think anything remotely incriminating was long ago destroyed. Never to be seen again. The idea that the Navy pathologist who oversaw the autopsy, again, was there an investigation going on in America of any greater import than what happened to the sitting president of the U.S. being slaughtered on U.S. soil? I think not. And I think, this is something that is easy to have also been forgotten or that successive generations just would not know. But the Zapruder film, which America sees every November 22nd on the anniversary of the assassination, was not shown to the American public until 1975. It was like a special. It was a daytime, I believe, Geraldo Rivera news special when he aired the Zapruder film. So that was 12 years after. And that's when America got the first look at okay, his head's going forward. The second shot seems to be throwing his head backward. And we were all told, well, we don't understand the laws of physics. So that bullet really was coming from the back, even though his head went backwards. Do you know what I mean? Like the Knicks film is Little Seen. That's another film that was taken by a Dallas maintenance man whose camera was pointed in the direction of the grassy knoll, where many believe a second shooter hid. So I think we're just going to have to learn to live with this, because I don't think whoever or whatever group was really in charge of all of this information ever wanted it to be known. And I think they succeeded.
I mean, really, when you think of this, it's sunlight's the best disinfectant. Why do you think that even these documents that seem to have there are no bombshells, so shrouded in secrecy, is there anything that today we as Americans can learn from this?
I think what this actually really reflects is what's going on in the country right now, which is such a deep distrust of people in charge, of our elected officials, of nameless, faceless bureaucrats. Again, anyone on the left who is wondering why Donald Trump won and why he has brought along his cohort of disruptors and why these disruptors seem so attractive to people this is exactly why. And I really think this time around, Trump did not let himself get bullied by the intelligence agencies or the NSA saying, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it, because he still is looking for answers as to how his would-be assassin got so close to him, why the FBI burned that guy's body before any sort of real investigatory autopsy or findings could be done. I think it's a little too close to home. And so I think we're going to live with this for a while, and we're going to see exactly what the fallout of this release and any subsequent release, should it happen, really is and means for the country.
Well, if there is significant fallout, if there happens to be a bombshell that is released in those thousands of pages, in the additional records, Maureen, I hope you come back on and break it down with me. Thank you so much for joining me.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.